30 minutes into the U.S. trading day on this Wednesday, February 28th. Here are the top stories we're following. Retail earnings. TJX beats on fourth quarter earnings with bargain hunters out in full force. However, analysts say that the first quarter guide looks a bit conservative. Apple rethink. Apple pulls a U-turn on its electric car plans, favor focusing on AI. We'll discuss what it means for the AI arms race and for tech more broadly. And rolling on the river, American Cruise Line's president and CEO Charles Robertson joins in just a bit to talk about the business of river cruises in the U.S. I'm Katie Greifeld in New York. Welcome to Bloomberg Markets. You take a look at these markets right now, and we're on the back foot. The S&P 500 off by about 0.3%. We're still above 5,000, but we'll see how long we hold that line. You take a look at big tech, not faring any better. The Nasdaq 100 currently off by about 0.7%. A bit of a downdraft now that we're through tech earnings. We'll see what the next catalyst is. And I wanted to take a look at the VIX. It is moving a little bit higher, but that handle not too impressive, trading with a 13 handle on the VIX. But let's get back to earnings and to TJX, because the discount retailer beating sales estimates in the fourth quarter, but the good news being overshadowed by the soft guide. For more, we're joined now by Bloomberg's Simone Foxman. And Simone, just how conservative was the guide?
Well, frankly, that has been
consumer everyone wants a piece of. We'll see, of course, if Macy's is successful there. Bloomberg's Simone Foxman, thank you so much. Let's take a broader look at the markets now, and we're going to do that with Cameron Dawson. She is New Edge Wealth CIO. And Cameron, talk to me about TJX. I thought it was really interesting, of course, a lot of hay being made about the soft guide. What does that signal to you, both about the actual company, but also the consumer at this point?
Yeah, we love a low bar, and so
because I actually have the author of that piece sitting right next to me. We're going to take a look at what's moving under the markets now with Bloomberg's Bailey Lipschultz. And we're not actually going to talk about why equity is now cheaper than debt, but that was a really great big take that you wrote yesterday. Tell me about eBay, though.
eBay up more than 7%.
Well, after a decade-long effort to build the iCar, Apple pulling the plug. The tech giant is planning to shift some of the 2,000 employees working on the project into AI. Bloomberg reporting there will also be layoffs. For more on all of this Apple news, we're joined now by Bloomberg Technology co-host Ed Ludlow. Ed, obviously this feels like the end of an era here. What does this mean for other EV makers that aren't Tesla in terms of Apple can't get this done? Why would they be able to?
Yeah, I mean, the consensus on the street seems to be that if Apple had ever got its act.
Reporting, as always, that, of course, is Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow. Much more coverage coming up on Bloomberg Technology. But before we get there, let's welcome back Cameron Dawson. She is New Edge Wealth CIO. And Cameron, I know that you're overweight tech, but let's get specific here. Talk to me about software versus hardware and how you're viewing that.
Yeah, I think the first start is just
conversation really went around the world, too. That, of course, is Cameron Dawson. She is New Edge Wealth CIO. Now, still ahead, we're going to take a look at the companies making the most social buzz today. That's in our Social Climber segment up next. This is Bloomberg. All right, time now for Social Climbers. Look at the stocks making waves on social media this morning. And first up, Virgin Galactic reporting fourth quarter revenues that fell short of expectations. The space tourism company working to rein in costs and also to slow its launch schedule. Now, these results highlight the slow but steady path to establishing a routine cadence of space flights for paying customers, but shares currently off by quite a bit. Next up, Beyond Meat, finding success beyond the U.S. The fake meat manufacturer topping earnings expectations thanks to international demand, particularly in Europe. The company has been trying to boost weak domestic demand by cutting prices, offering discounts, and eliminating jobs. The stock also had a massive short interest heading into this report, which might explain why shares are currently up about 44%, quite staggering there. And finally, no cheers here. Boston Beer, of course, that's the brewer of Sam Adams, reporting a decline in revenue thanks to significantly lower shipment volumes. The CEO of the company also announcing he will retire next month after 5 years at the helm. And of course, you can follow all the latest company buzz on TRE Go on your Bloomberg terminal. Now you take a quick look at the markets here. And again, we are on the back foot. You take a look at, one stock we're keeping an eye on is Norwegian Cruise Lines. It reported earnings after the bell yesterday and shares extending gains after surging 20% post results. Natalia Konijevic has more.
Katie, so the stock poll.
Thank you so much. And let's keep on cruising with Charles Robertson. He is American Cruise Line's president and CEO. Of course, it's domestically focused, both rivers and some ocean routes around the U.S. as well. So, Charles, we know that 2023 was a big year for cruising on the ocean. How is business on the rivers?
Thanks for having me on, Katie.
Mention here, because I know you're adding at least 5 more ships to that fleet. That fleet has already tripled in the past couple years or so. Are you adding more river routes as well, or what kind of thinking goes into that process?
We are. Domestic river cruising is still
about $3,700 or so. So that isn't something you necessarily book on a whim. What kind of decisions go into pricing? We talked to a lot of retailers, for example, that have been forced to raise their prices. What do the inputs look like on your side?
It is a premium product.
For example, are these trips that people book out far in advance? Are you seeing that time increase?
It is. What we're really seeing is
Consumers spend once they're actually on board. Once they're, buying food, they're buying alcohol, maybe they're buying spa packages as well. What is the breakdown that you get versus the onboard spend versus, say, how much they're actually paying for a ticket?
for American Cruise Lines, we have actually very little on
Customers as well. I know that you told the Wall Street Journal back in October that river cruising, traditionally it attracts an older audience. And of course, we saw with Natalia that it tends to be those aged 55 and older who tend to be your primary audience. Are you happy there, or are you trying to attract younger generations as well?
We're really happy there. And that's where we see this.
Curious how the older audience is faring with high interest rates and, of course, sticky inflation as maybe compared to those in their 20s, 30s, 40s. What differences are you seeing there?
I do think they're more
willing to spend. They just want to see some bang for their buck. That definitely tracks. I am curious, as you expand, as you build and acquire these new ships, how is the access to workers? What are you seeing on that front when it comes both to the cost of building and also the cost of employing people to build?
The cost of building the cost of both is going way up. The cost of building.
Really great conversation. Really appreciate having some time with you. That, of course, is Charles Robertson of American Cruise Lines, really giving us a breakdown of what the business of cruising looks like on the rivers versus on the ocean, which tends to dominate most of our conversations here. But let's get a check on these markets right now. We're going to do that with Abigail Doolittle.
Stocks on the day.
Bit of a holding pattern here. We do have some big economic data to get to tomorrow, but we're not there yet. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle. Thank you so much. Now, coming up in our next segment, we'll look at Israel's war. All right, it's time now for Wall Street Week. And earlier this week, Israel's central bank left rates unchanged. Now, that came as a surprise to most economists who were forecasting a rate cut. The central bank's governor cited uncertainty over the inflationary impact of the war. Wall Street Week host David Weston is with me now, and joining us is John Medved, Our Crowd founder and CEO. Our Crowd, of course, is a global venture investing platform. David, really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I always look forward to talking to John. And John, it's delightful to have you in New York. Your situation overall. What about the business climate in doing business, particularly with some of the startups that you invest in?
Well, what's amazing is that Thailand and Korea and all over Europe, people are still visiting.
That capital is being deployed at that scale. But I am curious about the talent pool. Like you said, of course, some of these foreign workers are starting to come back. But also, like you mentioned, a lot of workers have been called up for military service. And when it comes to these smaller companies, even if they get the funding that they badly need, what does the actual workforce look like?
So about the first times we talked to you, you had just gotten back from Riyadh. It was really just before, I believe, the conflict began. And there were great hopes about really doing business for the tech sector across the region.
It's wonderful to speak to you. It's great to see you in person, too. That, of course, is John Medved of Our Crowd. A really interesting conversation on the state of course, the startup landscape in Israel. And David, who else do you have coming up on
So
Wall Street?
tomorrow we have Lindsay Rosner, who's just gone to Goldman Sachs Asset Management. She's going to talk about
CE numbers that we're going to get tomorrow. We'll keep an eye out for that one. This is Bloomberg. All right, let's take a look at some of the stocks hitting highs and lows today. And we start with Chapman, Convoy Ventures co-founder and managing partner. He joins Bloomberg Technology.